Hi guys, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel, and my name is Betty and this is Betty's Space. So today I'm having a bit of a down day. I've tried to put on some jewellery and wear clothes that make me feel good because I'm just not feeling great today, and so I thought I would talk about something that is my absolute pride and joy. As you can see, I've got a massive stack of books here. You can't even, hang on. You can't even see them all. I've just knocked them all over. But I've got a massive stack of books here because this is a topic I am really passionate about, and it really combines two things I love. Today I'm talking about disabled book recs. So I have a massive pile here. There's a lot of neurodivergence, but there's also some other disability recommendations. I've read some on my Kindle, so these are the only physical ones I have, but I love all of these books so much. It really combines two passions of mine, which is disability advocacy and reading. So yeah, I'm gonna start, and I'm so proud of this collection because it has taken me so long to get a collection of disabled books that I love, because with representation, because it's really hard to find. I think there should be way more, especially I've got some non-fiction, but especially fiction books where the protagonist is disabled or is neurodivergent. I found that really hard to find, especially in genres that I like to read. I found a lot of children's books that have that now, but it's really hard to find ones for teens and adults. So yeah, these are some of my favourites. Future Betty here. I just wanted to say happy Neurodiversity Celebration Week. This video really fits this week and I completely forgot to mention it. But yeah, happy Neurodiversity Week. Back to the video. So first up, we have A Quiet Kind of Thunder. I've even bedazzled this one. I've bedazzled a few of them because when I did a little book bedazzling session, I always do the ones I love the most, and I love this book so much. And also it's got a really good design, I think, to bedazzle. But this is A Quiet Kind of Thunder by Sarah Barnard. I'm going to be really bad at pronouncing names, but she has got loads of books. This is the only one I've read of hers. I really want to read Beautiful Broken Things, which she's also put out. So this is about a deaf boy and a girl who has selective mutism. And so it's set at sort of school age, so upper secondary school. And so she uses BSL. She has a limited knowledge of BSL that she sometimes uses to communicate, and then he joins the school and the principal sort of pushes them together to be like, oh, he uses BSL full time, you know some BSL, I'm sure you'll be great friends, which is something that is it's made ironically in the book, of the idea that just because the two use a similar way to communicate doesn't mean they're automatically going to be friends. So that's kind of pointed out in the book as well. But it's such a great story. It's a romance, which is so cute. It's closed door. But she learns more BSL as she hangs out with them. They start off as friends, and they start with writing notes as well, and then she learns more BSL and he helps teach her, and then she becomes as far as I can tell, sort of fluent, and they hold all their conversations in it, and it's not BSL and selective mutism and deafness is a massive part of the story, but even if you took that out of it, it still has an incredible plot line. So it's not that's the main focus the whole way through. They have a lot of emotional talks, and they go through a rough patch and they come back together. I won't spoil it because I really do recommend you read it, but it's an incredible book with amazing representation of BSL, and it's amazing how she writes it as well, the author, how she, I'm trying to find where it is, how they use a lot of texting, but she puts the sign in bold. I don't know if you can see here, you want a drink, and then one of the boys, so you can tell when characters are talking and when they're signing, which I think is so cool. And all the chapter headings are written both with the number but also the sign, so that's 16. They've got 20 there, and all the chapters are written like that. So it's just a really cool and amazing book, and I was so glad I found it because I was specifically looking for some deaf and BSL recommendations because I wanted to read a book with those characters in, like it is in life, and this is, yeah, one of my favourites, so definitely recommend. Next we have Am I Normal Yet by Holly Bourne. I've talked about this book before. It's an amazing book. It has incredible OCD representation. I do think it should definitely come with a trigger warning. I don't think there's a trigger warning at the start of the book. No, there's not. But I do think it should definitely come with one if you have OCD, or even if you don't and you're someone that's more sensitive to sort of those darker topics, or more susceptible to, I don't know, you know yourself. But I found it's an incredible representation of what OCD is like. the way the compulsions are written, it's so compelling to see how the brain thinks. As someone with OCD, I did find it really difficult to read, especially towards the end, because my brain sort of latched onto her compulsions, and so I did feel like it was making me worse. I did finish it, but then I had to definitely, I haven't read it since, so I don't think I'd be able to read it again. But if you're someone who wants to understand the way, obviously OCD is different for everyone, but if you want to have a better understanding that isn't so textbook, I think this is a brilliant way to get it, because it is fiction, and you know, it's a compelling story, but it demonstrates so well how OCD can be passive, and then you can have flare-ups, and how that can feel and how that can sound in your brain. But yeah, it's an incredible, and it's sort of one of those coming of age stories. Like, it's got on the back like normal at 16, like how to be normal, go to college, have friends who like you, have parties, have a boyfriend. Like, it's got that kind of coming of age vibe to it as well, which so many books have, but with a really unique twist and a really beautiful story. Next we have Song for a Whale by Lynn Kelly, which this cover I always just think is so beautiful. It kind of, you can't really see it, but all the gold sort of reflects, so you can kind of see it there in the light. So this is about a girl who's deaf as well, and her grandparents are deaf, but she's the only deaf person at her school. So she signs, but she also has hearing aids, I think. I want to check that I'm right in that. I'm pretty sure she has hearing aids as well. And it was written actually by a sign language interpreter, so Lynn Kelly is an interpreter. And she loves picking tech things. Like, again, it's a really great story around having another plot that isn't just her being deaf. But she finds out about this whale who is a real whale, and they call it Blue 55 in this. I think in real life it's Blue 53. I don't know. When I read this I was like 13, and I had a massive obsession. Like, I found the whale that it was based off of, I learned all the facts about it. But yeah, so she learns about this whale Blue 55 who basically sings at a different frequency, so other whales can't track it, so it moves through the ocean alone, which whales usually move in pods. And then she finds out more about it, and she goes and she tries to go and see it, and she does go and see it, and she has this connection with it, and it's beautiful. Again, it's got amazing sign language representation, with like games that her grandparents play together. Like, they play this game, like the one sign game, where you have to have one hand shape. So like, say the hand shape was a fist, and then you have to try and make a story, but you have to incorporate as many signs as possible that use the fist shape, etc, etc. And it's got a lot about her, the fact that she has hearing friends, and she has a deaf friend who goes to an all deaf school where everyone signs, and talking about how that makes her feel different, and how they sign so much sign so much more fluently, and she feels like she's not deaf enough because her signing isn't like their signing, and etc, etc. Like, I think her deaf friend, her whole family signs, whereas the girl's called Iris. Iris's family, they don't all sign, only her grandparents do, who she doesn't live with. So it's got a really nice story about her family life, and how different lives can look with deaf representation, and how different people manage differently, and a beautiful like animal story as well, which again I read when I was younger, but I really think you could read it at any age, and it's such a beautiful story with such a beautiful cover as well. This is Camouflage by Dr. Sarah Bargelia? I'm not sure how you pronounce that. And the art's by Sophie Standing. This is a non-fiction book, and this is one of the first books I got when I was diagnosed. It wasn't the first book. The first book I got is actually up here, and it was I'm an Aspie girl. I was diagnosed when I was like 9, for context, which I don't think this is a great book anymore, but at the time it was the only thing my parents could find. Even this, it was too young for me, but it was all they could find. There was like no resources. And even it's labelled like a book for young girls with autistic spectrum conditions, and it's not got great, like, not bad messages, but it wasn't very competent, and the language is outdated. But this was one of the close second books that I got when I was a bit older, when I was sort of 10, 11, that I found that, actually I think my mum bought it for me. And it's got more of a scientific way, and it was written with the help of, it follows 6 different autistic women and their stories. So it's non-fiction, but it sort of tells you about their lives. And one of them, I think, is a mathematician, and it talks about how boys were diagnosed first, and why that was, and who came up with like that. And again, this is a bit outdated. They use high functioning and low functioning, which we don't use anymore. But it was a great book at the time. And it's got, again, it's really illustrated, not in a babyish way, but it's just got beautiful illustrations and sort of colour spectrums, and it made me feel really seen. It's a really good informational book. I think especially if you're diagnosed slightly later, or really at any age past like 10ish, but even if you're diagnosed later, I think this is a great insight into there are other women out here who are diagnosed, they have very diverse careers, why you might have been diagnosed later, why boys get diagnosed first, why these stereotypes exist, in a slightly more, if you don't want to read it in a fictional tale with a bit more facts and the basis behind it. The fact that all the information was taken from women who are autistic and their lives and their life stories and their experiences makes it feel really relatable and genuine, rather than some books that are written, you know, from a doctor who just studied it in a textbook and it's got no, you know, feeling to it. So yeah, and it's really thin, like it's a really short one if you're not much of a reader but you want some more information. This is a really good one. Next we have my favourite series if you want anything and everything neurodivergent. Ellie McNichol. I always call her McNichol, but I think it's McNichol. I always called her McNichol, but I think I heard her say it differently. So sorry if that's pronounced wrong. But I love her books so much. You might recognise her first book was A Kind of Spark. And this is such a brilliant book. This is about an autistic girl. She's got older twin sisters, one's autistic, one's not. You might have seen that the BBC turned this into a series with 2 seasons, and when I heard that the series was coming out, I was so excited. I cannot tell you how much I was jumping for joy, and all the actors in it that are written autistic were played by autistic people. Like the main girl in it is Addie. Addie was cast by an autistic actor. Her older sister Keedie, who is autistic in the book, was cast by an autistic actor. Even the twin sister Nina, who is technically in the book is written as neurotypical, was played by an autistic actor. So, and there's a behind the scenes of how they did it and how they made the actors feel comfortable and how they listened to them. And oh, it was just the most incredible project, and when I heard they were making it, it just felt like this massive step forward in representation, and I was so excited. But there's a whole series. So this was the first book about Addie, and then another one really recently this came out. This isn't, you don't have to read them in order, but this one came out called Keedie, which is all about, it's like set back from this. So when Keedie, who sort of sticks up for Addie a lot, when she was a child and what she went through, and this also has a lot of talk about the witches of Salem, and like the witch trials, and how basically, if you don't know, the witch trials where they burned witches was a lot of autistic women because it was women that were different, and they talk about that, which also led me into a massive hyperfixation of learning about that. And then there's a sort of a sub-series, but it's all written by Ellie McNichol, which I've bedazzled this one as well. I've bedazzled loads of her ones. This is called Like a Charm, and this is about a dyspraxic girl, and like there's magic in this one as well. She's like going through the city. I think it's set in Edinburgh if I'm right, and there's like magic. And then this is Show Us Who You Are. This is separate as well. This one is about a girl who, I can't even remember, I think she's dyslexic and he has ADHD. They're both neurodivergent. I think he's got ADHD and she's dyslexic, but don't quote me on that, I'm not 100% sure, but he's definitely got ADHD. And this was an amazing book as well, about more her learning about herself, and about, because he's homeschooled and she's not, and more learning about how that affects, like how that helps him, and how there are different ways to manage conditions, and how different people adapt, and what, you know, what options are out there. And this was an amazing book. And then she's also done, this was a carry on from Like a Charm. This is Like a Curse. It is set in Edinburgh, with the same characters as that, the dyspraxic girl. But yeah, she's really covered all neurodivergent. She's got like autistic, dyslexic, dyspraxic, ADHD, just a beautiful, beautiful series of books with amazing characters and wonderful representation. Ellie McNichol herself is neurodivergent. She's autistic, and I think she has ADHD as well. So yeah, a brilliant, brilliant perspective. I urge you to get into these at any age, but especially slightly younger. I'd recommend, like, I don't know, maybe 8 to 15 is probably the target audience, but any age really, you can read these and still find so much joy and relate to these characters so much. And definitely watch the series because it is so good, and rarely a series matches up to the book, but that was an amazing representation of Addie and all of her struggles and successes. Then the rest of these are all non-fiction. I read more recently, I've read in the last like 2 years, I've read a lot more non-fiction where I've wanted just people's experiences. Like I sort of want a diary of their life just to feel like I can relate to it. And especially I think a lot of the non-fiction books are what's helped me come to discoveries about myself as well, like learning things about the fact that I'm autistic that I didn't know was linked to the fact that I'm autistic, learning, like really coming into terms with my dyslexia, screening and then subsequent self-diagnosis, just really coming to terms with that as a part of my identity and feeling more assured in that, and, you know, accepting it as a part of me and feeling like I can ask for accommodations to help with that. So the first one of that is Different Not Less. This is by Chloe Hayden. You've probably seen her online. She was in the really famous sitcom Heartbreak High, and she's a big social media presence. And she's written a wonderful book about her life, being autistic, having ADHD, growing up feeling different. I really like the font of hers, like the way she's formatted the book, I really enjoy. Yeah, I found it a really easy read, a really quick read. Like, it wasn't difficult to get through. The language and the way it was formatted made it feel really accessible. And she's got, like, she writes at the start, like, go through this at any pace. And there's some really good title headings as well that I think is, like, the first one's called Once Upon a Time, Growing Up Quirky, School, Friends and Sidekicks, Mental Health, Settling Into Who You Are, Eye Sparkles, Adulting, Finding Your Happily Ever After. Like, it's got some really fun and light-hearted bits as well as the serious side. Then I've got this one I think I've read the most recently. This was Unmasked by Ellie Middleton, and I saw this recommended by Zara Beth, and she said it was amazing, so I got it as well. In fact, I've still got my overlay in the middle there because I did find this one, the way that it was written, not the wording but the way that it was like formatted, I did find slightly harder to read. But hers is, she's called it The Ultimate Guide to ADHD, Autism and Neurodivergence. And it's a lot more sort of, again, information giving. She talks about her life and what she's gone through and how she's come to her terms with her diagnosis and everything. But she also really focuses on why things are the way they are, why the system is like it is, how the system affects neurodivergent people, and ways you can combat that, especially by finding your own joy and finding your own dopamine. It was a really good read. It's not my favourite, but it's been a really good book. I think just anyone writing about their journey, I think just really helps. At least it helps me, I find, reading about other people's journeys and how they got there. Especially a lot of people that write these books were diagnosed later in life. I know Ellie was diagnosed when she was an adult. So it's interesting hearing that perspective as someone that's been diagnosed really young, and I'm so lucky to have had that. It's interesting to hear about different people and their perspectives if they've grown up not being diagnosed and how that's affected them. I find that really interesting to read. So that's that one. And then we have, this was the first non-fiction book I read about it, and someone that I really just became an idol and that I really did a lot of research into, and this is the Spectrum Girls Survival Guide, tongue twister, How to Grow Up Awesome and Autistic. The tagline's a bit cringy, but it's written by Sienna Castellon and it's got a foreword by Dr. Temple Grandin. And this was really incredible. I read this when I was maybe 14, 13. And she wrote it when she was a teenager. She wrote this at 16, which is an amazing perspective because all of these books actually that I've said so far, they were all written by adults when they were adults, which is great and they reflect on their childhood. But having something that was written by someone who was in school, had just finished, you know, secondary school, was going into college and was going through that, you can't relate more than someone who's writing it at that time. And yet this is more of like a guide, like it's written like a guide of like, it's got headings like, it talks about masking, it teaches you things about that, but then it's about how taking care of yourself and what accommodations you can give yourself, and in school what accommodations you can ask for, and it's got loads of resources of where you can go to websites and calling people, things that you're allowed to ask for, how to tell people in your life, whether you should tell people in your life. It's like a guide for like, you've just been given an autism diagnosis, it's in school, it really like it's to tell because that's school age, this one. You've been given one in school, here's what you can ask for, here's what you can do, here's hopefully some answers to some questions you're feeling, that kind of vibe. And I think this is a really important one for teachers and parents to read as well as school children. I think it's really that bracket of like, if you're in school and you've been diagnosed, or you teach at schools, any school, mainstream schools especially, because she went to a mainstream school, or parents, staff, teachers, TAs, I think this is a really great one for that. And this one actually comes with a booklet there's like a workbook that goes along with it that I never actually filled out, but it can be really good if you're a tactile learner or you're gonna sit and do it in an intervention with a kid or anything like that. And then finally, I'm sure there's more, but I can't find any more on my shelves, so I'm gonna call this finally. This is the most recent one that I read. It's just come out. It's called Enemy for a Brain by Zara Beth, who I've spoken about loads and who I really admire. And she's written about her life. She's literally called it a memoir, which is what I really enjoy reading, is a life story. And she talks about not only her autism diagnosis, which has been more recent, but also she's got lots of comorbidity conditions. So she's got FND, she has Tourette's, she has, you know, chronic illnesses, she uses a wheelchair, she uses Visible, which I used for a long time. It's literally in her cover photo. And yeah, just talking about that. This is a great one for an insight into that many conditions, her life, what it was like growing up. Really interesting. She gives loads of information. While it's not an information giving book, she's so articulate and so good at her advocacy work that she does, that she describes each of her conditions so well. And she gives a little diagnostic criteria as well, so if you're thinking, oh, actually that I really resonate with that, actually I think that really sounds like me, she gives a great thing of like on her Tourette's chapter, well, it's sprinkled throughout, but on the chapter specifically on that, she talks about Tourette's and the diagnostic criteria, but also the fact that there are other tic conditions and what the criteria for those are. So a prolonged tic condition, or what's it called? And other tic conditions, and what the diagnostic criteria for those are, because they are spoken about less, but you may actually think, oh, I relate to that one more. And gives great advice to do if you're trying to get a diagnosis, what sort of things you can bring to doctors, especially for FND, which is so hard to get diagnosed, what sort of things you need to be doing to try and get you that diagnosis. And yeah, I think this is a really amazing book. She's just released it. You can find her on Instagram. Most of these people actually, Sienna Castellon isn't on social media, but Ellie Middleton, Chloe Hayden, Ellie McNichol, they are all on social media and you can go and follow them. A lot of them have YouTubes as well and TikToks. So yeah, just most of them, their name is their handle. Maybe I'll link them below if I can be bothered. But yeah, this one I've just read and it has been a really, really great read, as always. So those are my disabled, disability, neurodivergent recommendations for books. I love all of these books so much. They all hold such a close place in my heart. I think representation needs to be everywhere. It needs to be in the media, but we need to have literature, we need to have art. The world is a diverse place filled with disabled people, and we need that represented in every area of life. So I think it's so important to have books for young children right up to adults, non-fiction, fiction, romance, fantasy. I think we need them in every genre, because that is an accurate reflection of the world we live in. And so these books hold a really special place in my heart, and I urge you to go and read any and all of them. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great day and a great week, and I shall see you soon.